Oh, welcome back. The quiet wait that shakes louder than thunder. They never saw it coming. Not the moves, not the timing, not the way you slipped through their traps like water through a fist. They thought you were still on square one while you were already standing at the finish line. Every glance, every pause, every silence they mistook for weakness was really you building an empire of invisible moves. The world only ever watches what's loud. Noise distracts them. But power? Real power lives in silence, in patience, in the quiet gathering of pieces no one else notices. While they were busy showing off their strategies, you were carving corridors they didn't even know existed. While they thought they were teaching you, you were studying them. And by the time they tried to use you, you'd already mapped to every inch of their game. That's the secret nobody tells you. Winning isn't about speed. It's about depth. It's about thinking in layers they can't even imagine. You didn't just plan ahead. You built entire outcomes inside your head and let them walk into the one you'd chosen for them. And they did, over and over again, because arrogance is predictable, and predictability is the easiest map to read. Now they sit in rooms, whispering. Now their meetings feel heavier, slower, like a tide coming in too fast. They don't know why they're nervous when your name comes up. They don't know why their hands shake when they imagine your silence. They just know something went wrong, something slipped, something shifted under their feet, and it's too late to fix it. You're not chasing them anymore. You're not even competing. You've already won the war they didn't realize they were in. And the beauty of it? You didn't need to break a single rule. You just made them irrelevant inside their own design. Because one step ahead is a myth for most people. For you, it's a lifestyle. They thought the board belonged to them. They believed the rules were fixed, the pieces unshakable, the game theirs by birthright. But they never understood that every board shifts under the weight of a player who refuses to follow patterns. And you don't follow patterns. You rewrite them. You never showed them your real face. Why should you? Masks are protection, but silence is sharper. You let them believe you were the pawn, quietly marching forward, boxed in by walls they built. And in that belief, they grew careless. They mistook your patience for limits. They mistook your calm for ignorance. They mistook you for someone ordinary, but you weren't walking their path. You were digging tunnels beneath it. You were watching from angles they didn't even account for. They wrote the rules, but you found the spaces between, the words where the truth lived, the loopholes, the cracks, the shadows, and there, you moved without noise, without warning. That's why when the moment came, you didn't react. You delivered, clean, precise, undeniable, a single move that collapsed every wall they thought was indestructible. They realized it too late. They realized you weren't just another piece on their board. You were the architect of a board they couldn't even see. Now they're replaying every conversation, every meeting, every choice they made in your presence. They're asking themselves, what did we miss? How long was this being built? The answer haunts them, because the truth is, you were always one step ahead. Not once, not twice, always. And the war, it ended before they even declared it had begun. That's the edge of real strategy. By the time your opponent recognizes the game, they're already checkmated. You can hear it in the way they talk now. Their voices carry hesitation, a stutter where there used to be arrogance. Every room you're not in still feels like you're there, watching, listening, waiting. They don't know if they're making decisions, or if they're already walking the path you set for them. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to do anything anymore. You already moved. You already built the framework, placed the pieces, timed the shift. Now they second-guess themselves into paralysis. Their strategies dissolve into whispers, arguments, and sleepless nights. They ask, what does he know? How far has she seen? Where's the blind spot we didn't notice? And the truth eats them alive. The blind spot isn't on the board. It's in them. Their own ego carved it open. Their own belief in control blinded them, and you saw it the moment you walked in. You don't fight battles the way they expect. You don't swing wildly. You wait. You calculate. You watch them drain their own energy, trying to outpace a ghost. Because to them, that's what you are now. A ghost in their system. Not loud, not predictable, not desperate. Just present, quiet, inevitable. The irony, they always prided themselves on being ruthless. They bragged about being steps ahead. But in the end, they were loud thieves playing in the dark, while you became the shadow the dark itself respects. They thought they were building a fortress. You turned their fortress into a cage of their own making. And here's the most cutting part. You never had to break them. You simply outlasted their illusions. One step ahead, always. Fear is a strange thing. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It creeps in at night when they're alone. When the noise dies. When their own minds become their loudest enemy. That's when your presence hits hardest. Not when you speak, not when you act, but when they realize you don't need to anymore. They thought power was a throne. They thought it was the ability to command, to shout orders, to dismantle everything in their path. But power isn't loud. Power is when the room shifts without you lifting a finger. Power is when they argue, change course, and hesitate, because your shadow is heavier than their certainty. Every time your name comes up, the air in the room grows colder. They steal quick glances at one another, trying to read each other's faces, desperate for someone to explain the unexplainable. They call it paranoia, but they know it's not. It's the realization that they're inside a game where every move was calculated long before they touched the board. And here's what terrifies them most. They can't find your weakness. They've tried to guess it, to fabricate it, to bait it out of you. But every attempt only revealed their own cracks. The harder they searched for an opening, the more exposed they became. It's a paradox they can't solve. The one who's always a step ahead never fights where they expect. So now even silence feels like strategy. Even your absence feels like presence. They don't know whether you're planning your next move, or if the final move has already been played. The truth? It has. They just haven't felt the full weight of it yet. That's the curse of being outmaneuvered. The game ended long before they realized they were pieces, not players. Collapse doesn't always look like an explosion. Sometimes it's slower, quieter, a system eating itself alive from the inside. And that's exactly what's happening to them now. They thought you'd come with fire and fury, something obvious, something they could brace against. But you never gave them that satisfaction. Instead, you let time itself do the work. You set the dominoes, and one by one, they've started falling. Meetings turn into arguments, plans turn into panic. Their so-called unity splinters under the pressure of invisible weight. The brilliance is that they can't even point to where it went wrong. That uncertainty is poison. They replay every detail, searching for the misstep. And in doing so, they realize something darker. Every step was the misstep, because you were already there, waiting. Every direction they turn is another wall you built for them years, months or moments ahead. And when the realization hits, when they finally see the walls closing in, the war is already over. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to stand in their face. The war was won in silence, in patience, in the way you stayed invisible until invisibility itself became your greatest weapon. Now every move they make feels like a trap. Every choice feels like a mistake. And the cruel irony? It is because you shaped a game where their options are illusions, and the outcome is already written. They thought they were chasing victory. They never realized they were running straight into checkmate. And you've been sitting at the table the whole time, calm, collected, untouched. Because you didn't just win the war, you ended it before they even realized it began. They used to pride themselves on control, on being the ones who called the shots, who dictated the pace, who believed they were untouchable. But now, control has flipped, and it's no longer in their hands. It's in the silence you left behind. That silence grows heavier every day, In boardrooms, in back rooms, in the moments before sleep. They wonder, where is he? What's she planning? Did we already lose? The questions pile up like bricks, suffocating them under their own uncertainty. And in that weight, they make mistakes. Small ones at first, then bigger, desperate, reckless, because that's what silence does. It drives the arrogant into panic. They thought strategy was about domination. You showed them it's about patience. They thought power was about control. You showed them it's about inevitability. And now, every whispered conversation, every sleepless night, every darting glance in their own meetings is proof they've already surrendered. What they don't realize is that your calm wasn't emptiness. It was precision. You weren't absent. You were orchestrating. You weren't ignoring. You were calculating. And by the time they understood, the board had shifted forever. Look at them now, flinching at shadows, jumping at echoes, losing faith in one another because deep down, they know the truth. You've already decided how this ends. You don't need to fight for dominance. You are the dominance, not through shouting, not through noise, but through a stillness so sharp, it resonates deeper than any clash. The contest wasn't won in noise. It was won in the spaces where they weren't looking. And now, every time your name surfaces, it freezes them in place. Because they don't fear what you've done. They fear what you haven't done yet. And that fear, that's your final leverage. There comes a moment in every empire where the mask slips, where the leaders stop pretending, where the cracks can no longer be hidden behind polished words or hollow promises. For them, that moment is now. Behind closed doors, they're finally admitting it. You were always ahead. They whisper it like a confession, like saying it out loud might summon you into the room. And in a way, it does. Your presence doesn't need walls or doors. It travels with their doubt. It seeps through their fear. Their hierarchy is collapsing from within. The loud ones, once so sure of themselves, now bite their tongues. The confident ones now argue over scraps of certainty. Every decision feels cursed, tainted, doomed before it's made. They're not running the system anymore. The system is running them, and you. You've already slipped beyond it, shaping a game they can't touch. They used to meet to plot against you. Now they meet to ask one another the same suffocating question: how did we lose control? And the cruel answer hangs in the air like smoke. They never had it. Not really. It was only ever borrowed. And you were the one holding the loan. And as they crumble, the outside world begins to notice. People see the hesitation, the chaos behind their polished smiles. They see the unease in their eyes when your name is mentioned. They don't know what happened, but they know something shifted. The illusion of control is gone. And with it, the empire they built is nothing more than dust held together by trembling hands. Because the truth is merciless. They weren't undone by noise. They were dismantled in silence. They weren't toppled. They simply unraveled, and the unraveling came not from noise, but from you. Destiny doesn't knock. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask if you're ready. Destiny walks in, rearranges the board, and leaves the room changed forever. And right now, they're suffocating under that truth. They told themselves it was skill, that they'd built the perfect system, the flawless design. But skill is fragile without vision. They never saw beyond the surface, never thought deeper than their own pride. You did. That was the difference. That's why every move they made was already calculated into your outcome. That's why every attempt to push you down only positioned you higher. And now, as they sit in their towers of glass and steel, they can't escape the feeling that their walls are bending inward. They blame each other. They question everything. But what they can't admit, what eats at them in silence, is that this was never their game to win. It was yours from the start. They call it luck. They call it chance. They call it anything but what it truly is. Inevitability, because the truth is too heavy for them to face. The truth is that the moment you stepped onto their board, it stopped being their board. The moment you played your first move, the ending was already written. And what's left for them now? To watch, to wait, to tremble as the reality unfolds. The reality that you're always one step ahead, that they were pieces in a game they never understood, that the contest they thought they were fighting has already been sealed by the quiet weight of your victory. Because sometimes victory isn't celebrated with cheers. Sometimes it's sealed with silence, with the look on their faces when they realize they lost before they began. And you already won. What breaks them most isn't the defeat itself. It's the realization that defeat was never a single moment. It wasn't one mistake, one collapse, one slip. No, defeat was sewn into every step they took, every word they spoke, every plan they built while you were already walking 3 layers deeper. That's why their fear feels endless, because they don't know when they lost. Was it yesterday? Was it years ago? Or was it the moment they underestimated the silence in your eyes? That uncertainty gnaws at them, wearing down the last fragments of their pride. You don't need to remind them of your victory. The world does it for you. The way conversations pause when you're mentioned. The way doors open that once stayed locked. The way people shift their loyalty without you demanding it. It all speaks louder than noise ever could. And here's the cruel part. They thought winning meant overpowering you. But you never had to overpower them. You just had to outlast their illusions. You just had to let their arrogance build walls that eventually collapsed under their own weight. Now every time they try to stand tall, the ground reminds them it belongs to you. Every time they try to claim the board, the silence reminds them they're only players on a stage you designed. The battle? It was never theirs to win. It was a performance written for one ending, the one you already delivered. And that's why they tremble now, because being one step ahead isn't just about strategy, it's about inevitability. The room has grown quiet now, not out of respect, but out of fear, because silence carries a heavier weight than screams, and your silence speaks one truth they cannot escape. The war is finished. And the truth? You didn't just win, you rewrote the meaning of victory. You didn't march with armies. You didn't beg for allies. You stood alone, unshaken, unbroken, and in that stillness, every empire that opposed you unraveled piece by piece. They'll spend years dissecting what happened. They'll gather in circles, whispering theories, convincing themselves it was luck, timing, or some invisible hand. But deep down, they know it was you. It was always you. The calm storm, the silent architect, the one they could never predict, never corner, never stop. You walked into a battlefield they thought they owned. And with every step, you made it clear they were already fighting shadows. Their strategies, outdated. Their moves, anticipated. Their courage, manufactured. And now, look at them. Echoes of who they once pretended to be. Their pride shattered. Their certainty dissolved. But you don't celebrate. You don't need applause. You don't need crowns, medals, or songs, because the greatest triumph isn't in the noise. It's in the silence after. The silence where they finally accept the truth. The war was over before it began. One step ahead, always. That's who you are. That's why they lost. That's why they'll never recover. And that's why history will never forget. The war that ended the moment you arrived.